Today, we are going to talk about hitting your profit goals, and this will be part one of how to figure your cost margin, gross margin, and profit margin, and why this is important for you to know. So let me ask you a question. Would you like to make $100,000? How about $100,000 in profit? So not just sales, but profit. Do you know how much you would need in sales to even hit that goal? Did you just take a guess? Or did you just say a buttload in your head? But before you can even worry about making a $100,000 profit, you really need to know how much you need to do in sales to pay your current bills. So we're going to start with that. Do you need $3,000 a month, $4,000 a month, or maybe it's $5,000 a month? At the end of the day, you need to know what your take-home needs to be able to pay your bills. So you need to know which of those numbers, or any number, is the right one. It might be something different. So once you know that number, do you know how much you need to do in sales to hit that number? Or do you just work your butt off like most folks just to hit your needs every single month that you really don't know because you're going to say it varies month to month, or you just don't have an idea? You just keep working until you're able to pay it. Well, there's an easier way. Believe it or not, you can know exactly what you need to do in sales to hit this profit need. What if you knew that you needed to do $9,000 in sales just to take home $3,500? Would that make a difference on how you ran your business? Would you have a plan? Could you put better goals together? I think you could. You'd be one step closer to your $100,000 in profit because all you would have to do is figure out how to sell more to hit that goal. You must know your cost margin, gross margin, and profit margin to be able to figure out what sales you need to be able to hit that profit need. I can already see it. Most of you are going, what the heck are those three things? Well, let's break them down so that you understand them. As you know, sales minus your costs minus your expenses equal what you get to take home. That's very important because it's not for every sale that you do you get to keep that money. You must pay for the costs for doing that sale or that service, and then you also have expenses month to month to run your business. That's what you get to take home. Now let's do a little quick example. Let's say you do $8,000 in sales, but you have $3,000 of costs in products, labor. You also have $1,000 a month in expenses. This means that out of that $8,000, you get to take home $4,000 every month. Now, to find your sales needed to be able to hit your profit, you actually reverse engineer it, basically work the problem backwards. So in this case, we know profit plus your costs plus your expenses equals the sales needed. So in our example, $4,000 of profit plus $3,000 of costs, $1,000 in expenses equal $8,000 in sales. So you can see we can work this problem both directions. The problem is you need to know those numbers in between. So let's pick a number. We're going to say that you need $4,000 a month, and this is going to be our example through the rest of the course. So if you need $4,000 a month, then you know you need to make $48,000 a year. Not quite our $100,000 yet, but at least we're going to be shooting for halfway there. We also know that your expenses run, say, $1,000 a month, which then tells us that it's $12,000 a year in expenses. And remember, your expenses are going to be your gas, your vehicle, if you have a place that you're renting, equipment that's renting, basically your insurance, things like that. All the things that you pay every single month regardless if you have any sales. So what we know is you have $4,000 take home that you need, and you also have $1,000 worth of expenses. So at the end of the day, in order for you to pay these bills, you need to have $5,000 total in profit to be able to take care of these two things, which comes to $60,000 a year. So you need $60,000 a year to pay your expenses and to pay your take home, or to cover what you want to take home. So, but the question really still becomes, how much do you need to do in sales to get to that $60,000? Because you remember, you still have to deal with your costs. So to figure out the sales needed, you must know those three things: your cost margin, your gross margin, and your profit margin. But don't worry, we're going to talk about those. As you know, your sales equal your costs plus your profit. So if you have a $100 sale and you know you have $40 of cost, that means you have $60 of profit from that particular sale. Whether it's a service or a sale, it's broken down into these two parts. You haven't paid any expenses yet, but remember, we're rolling that up into our total profit because it's going to come off of that. So our product costs, or also known as cost of goods, in our particular example is the $40. Once again, we're not counting expenses at this stage. So out of our $100, we know that $40 is product costs or cost of goods. We also therefore know that our gross profit, this is one of our words, our gross profit, which means before expenses, that's all gross profit means, is before expenses, there's $60 worth of profit. Now, when we talk about margins, usually that is done in percentages. So when we say gross margin, we're really talking about what that percentage is. Now, to figure out your margins, you basically are converting a decimal into a percentage. So looking at our example again, to figure out our cost margin, we are going to divide our costs, so the $40, divided by our sales to get our cost margin. So in this particular case, it's $40 divided by $100 equals 0.40, which is also known as 40%. If we flip it and we want to now know what our profit margin is, we would take the profit divided by the sales, and we're going to get our profit margin. So in this case, $60 divided by the $100 equals 0.60, which converted into decimal means 60% profit margin. Now, profit margin is better known as gross margin. What is your gross margin? So what is your profit margin on your sales? Gross margin is the amount of profit made on a sale prior to expenses. Okay, so gross is just mean the total roll-up of profit before you pay anything else. Easiest way to think about it. Now, why is this important for you to know? Well, knowing this percentage helps us to figure out the sales needed for you to hit your profit goals. And I know some of you are not math nerds, and that's okay, but you need to understand where this number comes from, and you're going to see how it's important here in a few minutes. Now, go back to our example. What we know, we have a $4,000 profit take home that you need to be able to take home at the end of the day. You also know you have $1,000 worth of expenses, so your total profit need, your gross profit needed, is $5,000. So go back to our example. Remember, we got this because we had our $60 profit divided by our $100 is 60%. So for our example, we're using this as our fictitious business person. We know that in this particular case, it's 60% profit margin. Now that's just on an item. So when you think of your total products, you're just going to roll them all up as an average. So let's try to figure out that if this business's overall gross margin runs about 60%, let's try to figure out what it needs for sales. So using our calculation, we know that our profit needed is the $5,000 divided by the sales, which we do not know yet, but we know it's going to come out to a 60% gross margin. So let's look at this. We're going to break it down with what we do know. And this is going to throw you, but just hang in there with me. So we know we have a profit of $4,000 that we need to take home. We also know that we have $1,000 worth of expenses, which comes to the $5,000 that we've been talking about. What we don't know is our costs and our sales needed. But we do know our costs are going to run us 40% and our profit's going to run us 60%, So we know our profit and expenses are going to be 60%. And when we divide that $5,000 by the 60%, well, actually 0.60, we're going to come up with 8,333. And if we take the 8,333 minus the 5,000, we know that our 40% costs are 3,333. I know this is probably your brain right now, just on fire, exploding, going, what the heck, Tammy? But don't panic, okay? It's going to be okay. We're going to find a way to make this easy for you. I have a tool that I have put together that really easily is going to help you calculate this out for you. And we're going to look at this in a little bit more, but basically it's a spreadsheet that you will put on your computer. And if you notice the yellow parts, that's all you need. You just need to know the numbers that are going into these yellow boxes. The rest will calculate out for you. Now, hang on, I'm going to show you this. So let's go back to our example. The problem is when we broke down our $100, it's really easy to know what your profit margin is on individual sales or individual services. The problem is for your gross sales for the month, that number is going to change and it's going to fluctuate. So that number might be 38%, 45%, 50%. It's really going to be using the same exact calculations, but the numbers are going to be bigger, but you're still going to come out with a percentage. So let's just say that in our particular business that we're looking at, they did sales of $67.20 for the month. Their costs, when they added up all their costs came out to $28.50. So when you take the $67.50 minus the $28.50 in costs, that means they had a leftover profit before expenses. So our gross margin, we had $38.70 left before expenses. See how we got that? You're going to do the same thing in your business. Now, to figure out the gross margin, we take that profit, which we just figured out, the $38.70, divided by the sales we know for the month, which were $67.20, and that's going to tell us our gross margin is 57%, otherwise known as 0.57. And to figure out our cost margin, we take the cost, the $28.50, divided by those same sales of $67.20, and it tells us that our cost margin is 43% or 0.43. Now you'll notice everything equals 100%. So our total sales, which is 100%, minus the 57% we figured out for the profit margin, and the 43% for the cost margin. You'll notice if you put the 43 and the 57 together, it equals 100% of our sales. It's just broken into these two parts. The cost margin is what is going to be important for the spreadsheet. So you need to know what your costs run you as a percentage of your sales. So once again, let's go back to our example. And if you remember, we have a $3,000 profit need, $1,000 in expenses, and we're going to say 40% cost margin. So this is the example we're going to use because it's already in the spreadsheet when you open it up. So here's our spreadsheet, and we're going to go here to the monthly take-home need. So this is what they need for their bills. You'll see in example 1, there's a need for $3,000 and the $1,000 for monthly expenses. Combine, that's going to give you the $4,000 you see to the left. And then we're going to key in the 40% that we know the cost margin runs them. So basically 40% of their sales is going to be towards costs. And you'll notice there's a little blue mark over to the left of the arrow. On the bottom of the page, you can actually key in those numbers and it will calculate out that percentage for you. Now, this tells you with those needs and the 40%, the monthly sales to accomplish this needs to be $6,667 or annual sales of $80,000. The cool thing is, lower in the spreadsheet, every month you can put in the percentage of your sales. You'll notice here that in the top line, it's pretty consistent, 8%, 9%, 8%. That's a business that's the same year round. The example below will show you where it changes month to month, 5%, 7, 12, 15. This is great for a seasonal business. Below this off the screen is a blank area where you can put in your particular situation. Now, let's figure yours. So you're going to put in what your particular cost margin is that you calculated out. Don't forget, at the bottom of the spreadsheet, there's a place where you can key in your total sales and your costs, and it'll help you figure out this percentage. So you're going to key in that number, 35%, 42%, whatever number you come up with. Then you're going to put in here what you need your take home to be, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, whatever that number is. By the way, if you use example 3, you'll notice that this is somebody who's trying to get to a $100,000 profit. You're going to put in what your monthly expenses are. For most cases, you can put in what the average is. You might have a month that's $1,200, another month that's $1,500, another month that's $1,000. Put in what you think it's going to be. Then over here, you're going to get what your actual sales. So instead of zeros below this arrow, you would actually have your particular numbers in there. And once again, don't forget, you can figure it out as well by using the monthly breakdown. Now, here's the great news. Now you know what sales you need to be able to hit your particular profit goals. And if you want a little bit more information where I go into even more of this, on the Local Small Business Coach podcast, in episode 3, we break down the number side of all of this. But it's not all about numbers, because when you go to part 2 of episode 4, we'll go through 8 steps to help you increase your profits and what you're going to do with this number and how you're going to use it to increase your profits. And there's a free workbook over on the website you'll see at trainingforlocalsmallbusinessowners.com for these 8 steps to increase your profit. It is here at trainingforlocalsmallbusinessowners.com where you will find the spreadsheet that I just showed you, as well as the workbook for helping to increase those profits. Now, I hope this helps, because remember, knowing is half the battle to your success. Good luck, and don't forget to listen to the Local Small Business Coach podcast and visit trainingforlocalsmallbusinessowners.com, where we have free training materials, tools, and resources for you. And on the podcast, we take your questions to help you out.